Hi everyone, I'm Natalia. Welcome to my channel. Today I'd like to talk to you about ego death. What is ego death in relationship specifically to Hekate and working with Hekate. I will also would like to share with you some of the books that I personally think are really good if you're interested in learning more about her, as well as I have tarot and oracle decks, which in my opinion work really well when you're trying to work with her, to share with all of you today. Before I start talking about Hecate and my personal experience with Hecate and my understanding of Hecate, I want you all to keep in mind that I'm sharing with you obviously it goes without saying, this personal experiences for sure, but also you have to understand that I am sharing with you knowledge that I have of her up to this point of my relationship with her, which is still very young. And even though I have had her on my altar for, I think, 7 years, who knows when I first went on YouTube? Kasia, I have to find out. Kasia, how long have we been friends? I think it's 7 years. That's how long I had some form of relationship with her. I can say that she's my primary goddess. I'll share that as I go along. But what I want to say is that I read a lot of books on her. And I obviously, as one reads books, did extrapolate from the books content and material that resonates with me, which I will be sharing with all of you today. And again, everything that I share is only situated in a very limited relationship with her. So keep that in mind, obviously. Not an expert on Hecate. I don't think anybody is. So keep that in mind. So let's start by sharing about how did this whole thing started out for me. About somebody who has been with my channel since the very beginning is probably going to comment and say whether it has been 7 or I want to say 10 years, but I think it has been 7 years. 10 years kind of scary. Time goes by really fast. Is when 7 years ago, let's say, is when I actually decided to have a YouTube channel, because that's around that time when I realized there was actually people on tarot YouTube talking about tarot and occult spirituality and witchcraft and all of these really fascinating things. And when I realized that there was a world out there, I got obviously interested in it. And that's what led me actually to starting my YouTube channel back then, because as a psychologist, I didn't really see anybody talk about it from a very deeply psychological perspective. And I wanted to see the content I would want to hear. So I started creating the content that I felt was lacking on YouTube. And to this day, this is kind of my motive with this channel is I want to create stuff that I feel is maybe we don't have enough of. So when I started with YouTube and following all the amazing YouTubers and listening about their practice and listening about their relationships, as you all know, there's a lot of people who do tarot are also into other things. And oftentimes those other things are working with deities. And people will often talk about the goddesses they work with. Racine, who you know, I really adore her channel, talks about Isis all the time because Isis is her main goddess. Somebody else is going to be talking about Persephone. Somebody else is going to be talking about Diana. Everybody's talking about their own relationship to a goddess or to multiple goddesses. And in the beginning for me, and I'm sure it was like that for a lot of you, there was a lot of imitation happening where I would just, in an attempt to find and figure out who I am, I would gravitate towards different things and just grab onto things. One thing that was just from the start, a very kind of a clear and concise thing that never went away, was my initial instinctual, I guess you can say not even instinctual, but the way my character, my personality operates. I was never drawn to multi-goddesses ever. I remember I had some of those goddess decks, comes from my collection, and I always got rid of them because I just did not feel like I could work with so many multifacets of such strong energetic forces. I felt that it wasn't doing them justice for me because each one of them is so powerful. So I felt like, for me at least, I needed to work with one particular. So initially, the goddess that just kind of showed up in my life and I instinctually, intuitively drew toward was Hecate. I know a lot of people are drawn to Hecate because she's considered to be kind of the goddess of the witchcraft. And back then, I wasn't even meddling with anything occultish at all. For me, what drew me specifically to her was the underworld. For me, what drew me specifically to her was that she resides in a sphere, and she's embodied in the environment of death. It is death in association to her that drew me very closely. Death, as a lot of you know, is something that it's like a magnetic pull to me. So that's why I was drawn to her. And I have a statue. I got a statue for myself at the time, and that's the only goddess statue I had until recently. I got Lilith. I have a story about that, which is getting packaged and shipped to a friend of mine. But Hecate was the only one, and I never really felt drawn to any other goddess. To say that I work deeply with Hecate, to be honest, I can't say. I occasionally maybe will light candles on my altar. I will occasionally maybe put things down. I never really necessarily a person who would make an offering. I was never a person who would necessarily step and engage in dialogue or conversation. But I remember one time where I felt her presence the strongest. And you guys got to keep in mind, I'm one of those people that is very cerebral. And as a result, it's very difficult for me to drop into my inner self, to kind of get away from my headspace. And so I'm not even the person who does a really good job at meditating. So for me to sit down and perhaps engage in any kind of space and being contained in a space with a deity, for me, it's challenging. So it's not my cup of tea, so I never do it. But one time I felt her presence very strongly, and it was probably about 5 years ago. A lot of you know I had cancer when I was 16, so I have a prosthetic knee, and I have not just prosthetic knee, I have complete prosthesis. And I had it since I was 16 years old, and has done really well. But I started to grow a bump on the side of my knee, and I started to get worried. So I went to one doctor, and he said, "Oh, I think it's probably some liquid coagulating," and he couldn't remove it with the needle. And so he said, "Okay, I think we have to really open you up and see what it is, and hopefully it's not a tumor." Of course, for anybody who ever had cancer, to hear the word tumor is terrifying. And for me, it was really terrifying. So I was referred to an oncologist, an amazing oncologist who my doctor to this day. Shockingly, I say shockingly because this person is this Kaiser, and this Kaiser, I had a really bad experiences with healthcare, but amazing oncologist. And he said, "I doubted that it's a tumor. I really doubt it, but it's a possibility. We're going to open you up, and we're going to check what it is. Ideally, it's not what the worst case scenario. We're going to take care of whatever it is." And he said, "Since I'm going to have you open up on a table, I'm also going to make sure that your metal and everything is still intact, so we don't have to do full knee replacement." And I was like, "Okay, fine. Knee replacement, I can be ready for it, even though recovery is going to be horrific, but the tumor I cannot deal with." And you can only imagine the amount of anxiety and fears that I had. And so here I am, and I was doing the tarot readings. Is everything going to be okay? Is everything going to be okay? And this is a time when tarot cards, I learned, when you're so anxious and worried, they're going to tell you, they're not going to tell you the outcome. They're going to just play back your anxiety and your worry. And I just had anxiety and worry type of cards coming up again and again and again and again. Cards such as, for example, Nine of Swords, cards of like Nine of Wands. And so I got to the point where I thought, I'm just losing my head. I don't know what to do. I'm really worried. I'm going to have the surgery. I really don't want to wake up from surgery and find out I have cancer. I had this goddess deck, the Goddesses and Sirens deck that I got rid of as well. And I remember to this day, I had that deck, and then I had Kim Krantz archetypal cards. And this is where the use of the cards can be so helpful for all of us. And this is obviously why we connect with cards, because in a moment of such despair, they can bring so much light. So I'm sitting there and I'm asking these two oracles, because I can't do tarot cards anymore. Please help me. Please help me. Is this just something mild going on, or is my cancer going to be fucking back? And I just don't think I can go through this. And I'm getting all emotional thinking about it, because idea of going through cancer again. And when I went through it first time, I had 16 chemotherapies, and they were horrific, and I responded really badly to chemo. So not to make this into a very emotional outpour for all of you, I drew cards, and one of the cards from Kim Krantz is fracture. I think it's actually called fracture. And then I drew Hekate. And the minute I drew Hekate, and the minute I saw fracture, which fracture to me felt like, no, this is going to be something minor, something broken, something that can be mended and fixed. And then when I saw Hekate, I just knew she was there watching over me, and she was saying, it's going to be okay. I'm here, it's going to be okay. I don't know how I felt it, but that's the only time so far where I very strongly felt her presence. So for me, I will never forget that, because it's like the weight has been lifted. I went to surgery just knowing finally I'll be okay. I came out from the surgery, my doctor said, apparently what happened is, because I have two metals to create a new knee, they put a little plastic when your knee joint goes up and down, and I'm very active. I like to cycle on Peloton. I've always been very active. So this plastic worn out, and what happened is that it made a grind in my knee, and all this metal specks after each grind coagulated. And he even showed me a picture, because he was like so excited. Some surgeons are really dorks and really excited about their work, how he had to clear it all out, but he said no tumor, just like he expected, and everything is fine. And he also said that my knee is in excellent shape, wonderful, may last me God knows how long, maybe until I die, which I hope so. So it was wonderful news. And if I didn't do that reading, and if I didn't pull those cards, I would have gone there with so much real anxiety and so much worry. And fortunately, it was able to calm my mind. So this is the power of not only Hekate, but this is the power also, obviously, the tools that we use, I think. It can be so instrumental. Having said that, she, as I said, clearly is the only one I ever been drawn to. I've never been attracted to any other goddesses, really, even though I have already been learning about a lot of goddesses, but it has been primarily her. Now, let's get to the ego death and working with Hekate. What do I mean by ego death? Ego death oftentimes gets very confused with some individuals, because there was a time period when certain spiritual groups thought that it would be a good idea to completely annihilate ego. And people will strive to reach spiritual enlightenment in order to completely divorce themselves from their ego. Annihilation of ego, in my opinion, psychologically is impossible. If you annihilate the ego, you then are in psychotic state. We need our ego. So when psychologists talk about ego death, they don't talk about completely killing ego. They're talking about killing off aspects or parts of the ego that are no longer benefiting you, that are detrimental to your self-growth and your strive and your well-being. So that's what I mean by ego death. Another way to understand ego death is shadow work. Shadow work can be synonymous with ego death, because you're trying to, in this case, you're trying to bring up things from the unconsciousness, you're trying to make it conscious, and then by making it conscious, then you try to integrate it into yourself. But when you integrate it into yourself, there's an element of acceptance. You have to accept that this aspect exists within you. And that acceptance requires an element of ego that is resisting it to die and to chip away. Why do I equate Hekate to ego death? I know that a lot of people equate Hekate, like I said, she's personal to everybody in different ways. And some people equate Hekate to, the goddess, like I said, of the witchcraft. She's there to help them with their magical work. The Hekate as a goddess of underworld and necromancy. And then there's Hekate that people say is great for shadow work. I'm not talking about shadow work here. Let me explain why. Shadow work, and even though Hekate is great for shadow work is, in my opinion, let me rephrase it. Shadow work can be done two ways. One way, you actively, consciously seek out shadow work. You sit down with cards or with journal or some other instruments, or maybe through the process of engaging in psychotherapy, and you actively seek out to do shadow. You actively seek out to go to the depths of you to find out and bring up those unconscious elements. It's an active engagement. Shadow work also happens second way, when you're almost, I want to say, forced into it. In other words, think about areas in your life when you go through the hardships and through the challenges. Inevitably, things shift within you. Inevitably, part of your ego dies. Inevitably, part of your unconscious become conscious and become integrated. That is also shadow work. I think a lot of us are engaged in shadow work. We just don't call it, we don't realize it. But anytime you're forced with a challenge and you confront challenge and you move forward, you're inevitably doing some element of shadow work too. So I'm talking about the second part of the shadow work. I'm talking about the one where you are forcibly, in a way, forced into it through life challenges and life shifts. Because when I look at the Hekate, there's two things to me that immediately, I would say, symbolize or mentalize who she is for me. One is she is a goddess that is of the crossroads. When I think about the crossroads, I think immediately about challenges. You just found out you have cancer, that's a crossroad. The clients I work with who are experiencing gender dysphoria are at a crossroads in their life. You just lost your job, you are at a crossroads. You just found out you're in an abusive relationship, you are at a crossroads. Those things are crossroads elements of life. So first and foremost, she's, for me, I associate her with this, somebody who teaches you to walk through the experiences of this challenge shadow work, not actively, well, I'm going to go and do shadow work through the cards by myself because I want to learn and integrate, but because, damn, I'm at a crossroads in my life. And the second element that I mentalize with her is that she's a torch bearer, meaning to me, she's going to illuminate that which is you're not yet seeing. She's going to light the way. She's going to be able to show you or help you navigate and find a way forward, which is, again, has to do with being at this junction of the crossroads. And that's when I think about all of that crossroads and being in the dark, not knowing where to go, but then finding a way where you have to go. When we do have that illumination through her torches of where we need to go, oftentimes where we have to go is the most difficult path where we actually have to be at. And the tremendous amount of resistance comes through. Anybody who ever been at a crossroads knows that that illumination is never easy. When I was sick with cancer, right? Crossroads, huge crossroads. I knew that I had to go through the treatment. That the illumination was, you're going to have 16 chemotherapies. And the bigger part of that illumination is that, girl, you better rally your resources and your strengths because you're going to need it and you're going to have to get through this. And I had to mentally prepare myself for it. Those things are very, very challenging. So for me, Hekate, I associate her as somebody who is there to, help me figure out which way to go, but no question about it, she's going to point in the right way. And the right way is always going to be the hardest way. And the right way is always going to be the most challenging one. And because I will go through the right path, I will grow. I will shed parts of my ego. I will gain more perspective. I will gain more insight. I will shift and change as a woman. And I will also integrate parts of myself from my unconscious. This is how I see her, primarily as the torch bearer and as the crossroads to me immediately comes to mind. Those are a few things. I know that for a lot of people, there's a lot of other things that's in the underworld, like I said, witchcraft, necromancy, a lot of other things. But for me, this is the primary one because those things are so, so challenging. And a lot of people usually say that she shows up in their lives specifically when they are already at a crossroads. I can say that for me, I just was drawn to her I feel like in life, I constantly do go through the crossroads because I just constantly find myself challenging myself and pushing myself, which is hard to do, and I hate doing it. But I also get restless and really destabilized really internally if I maintain in a status quo too long. Having said that, let me share some books. I don't even know how long have I been talking, and if this is long, and those of you who enjoy long videos, I hope you do enjoy this. There's lots of books on Hecate. There's also two really good classes on Hecate that I know of. One is by Jason Miller, and I think it's 1 or 2 part class. And another one is by Jack Rail, who did Hackathon, which is back in print, and I pre-ordered it. It's pre-orders. You can find it on Mr. Kaka's books, I believe. When I found out there were classes, I found out about classes 3 years ago. I wanted to initially take Jack Rail's class because his class was cheaper than Jack Miller's class. Jack Rail's class is $400, broken down in payments. Jason Miller, I believe at the time, was $800. I believe that's correct price. Jack Rail's class 3 years ago was closed. It was the class was full, but Jason Miller class was available. So I signed up for the $800 Jason Miller class, and a week into the class, and by the way, I have nothing. Jason Miller is a wonderful author. I love his books. For me, what happened is my dog Freud got really sick, and my life got quickly destabilized. And a week into the course, I emailed Jason. I said, "I'm really sorry. This is not going to happen for me right now. Is if possible to get refund? If not, this is things happen. I totally get it." He was amazing. He had no problem refunding me, even though I paid in full. He was just wonderful. And his class has people who talk about his class say amazing things. I obviously never took full course, apart from barely a week of introduction. So I can't speak about it, but my interaction with him was being amazing. Today, coincidentally, I was driving and I was listening to Foolish Fish, Dennis Poison, talking about updates, new books, new things in the occult world. And the first thing he talks about is Hackathon, which I already pre-ordered. And then he talks about how Jack Rail's class is now reopened again for enrollment. And guess who pulls over on the road and signs up for the class. I'm going to link the class below. If those of you who want to take the class, let me know if you're going to take the class. I would love to be classmates with you. My friend Barb is also taking the class. So this is going to be fun. And I'm also going to link below. There's a great interview with Jack Rail, who's a teacher for the course, from the Glitch Bottle, which I listened. It's always helpful sometimes to hear about the teachers, so you get a little bit of flavor, and that can help make decision if it's going to be worth it for you or not. So I'll link that below. So I don't know how relevant, not relevant, but how much my perception of what I'm sharing with you is going to shift after I'm going to take the course and dive even more deeper, since, like I said, I haven't really dived deeper. But up to this point, I've read so many books on Hecate, and there's a lot of books on her. I had so many books come and go because I'm trying to clear out my shelf space. So every time I read books that I don't want to keep for references, I take them to the Goodwill. So there's a lot of books I read that I don't have. Without a doubt, one of the most quotable source for Hecate books is going to be Sorita d'Este. Sorita has written a lot of books on Hecate. I have this one, which is historical, and I have this one, which is kind of an anthology of people working with Hecate and their experiences, which I always love anthology. Really enjoyed this one. This one is historical. This is my challenge with Hecate books. A lot of times they dive so much into historical text that they kind of lose me sometimes, and I just feel like something is lacking. Maybe it's because I'm not really actively practicing, so I feel like the hymns and everything else is irrelevant. So for me, it's just not really worth it. Recently, I read a book that I really enjoyed, and if you are new to Hecate and want to just have a jump starting point, I think this is a great jump starting point. It is this book. You can see that there's lots of things that which I seldom highlight in books, but when I do, it's really worth it. This is by Courtney. I was surprised how much I enjoyed this book. Courtney is a great writer, and she does such a great job presenting history in a present now way. And what I love the most is how relevant she makes some of these elements to today. So I really enjoyed this one. And one of my favorite books up to this point, and I would be curious to see what Jack Grail's Hackathon is, because apparently it's a grimoire, but I'd be curious to see what that's going to offer. But I'm also going to be taking his course. This one. Now, also highlighted, this one may be not familiar to a lot of you. This is by Jeff Cullen. You can find Jeff Cullen on Instagram. I'll link his name below. This is his kind of grimoire, if you will, on working with her. And this has been my favorite so far because it's so approachable. You can buy it in hard copy, gilded, or paperback on his Etsy shop. I really enjoyed it. I think from all of the approaches where it does a great job of bringing history and also elements of how to work with her in a very approachable, adjustable way. This has been one of my favorite books. So I would recommend this one for anybody. And this one was a really good read. So now let's get to talking about the decks for Hecate. I have for you to share with you 4 decks and 4 oracles and 2 important decks I feel that I for her working with her. Now, as I said, for me, when I think about decks for Hecate, I know some people again think active shadow work, right? As they think about Lantern Oracle, or maybe they think about Less Vampires Oracle, or they think about some other decks that people tend to associate with shadow work because they're thinking Hecate, they're going to active shadow work. I'm not talking about here again active shadow work. I'm talking about you're at the crossroads in life. You're in a challenging position. And you know that you're about to go through challenging times and you need illumination and you need that push. And you know that as you go through the challenge, you're going to scoff and you're going to crawl and there's going to be bruises and there's going to be scratches. And you know that it's going to be for the better for you. So you need a deck that is going to be attuned to that, attuned to the challenges you're in. It's a deck that can be honest with you. It's a deck that can speak to you. It's a deck that can clearly give you clear direction and be very firm that this is the direction you will take, just like Hecate would. Even though it is difficult, this is the best option for you. So I have those type of decks in here. I also, well, I'll share with you when I show you the deck. First deck is a recent deck that I got, and I'll work with it longer, and then I may do a very in-depth view of this deck. A lot of you know this deck. This deck, when it got to me, immediately screamed Hecate deck. It is the nameless one. And Racine from Oval Moon 513, did I get this right? Has a really good review of this deck. This deck is, interestingly, I have 4 decks to share. 2 of them I read with reversals. There's something about, well, this particular decks, they almost want to be read with reversals. But because when we're at the crossroads, reversals offer a way of seeing that we wouldn't ordinarily see. This is why you guys see some cards are upside down, because I read this deck with reversal. This deck is very, if you're also looking for a deck, if you're into witchcraft and you're looking for a deck that you would call witchy deck or a culty deck, this would be it. This is, interestingly, I have an intuitive feeling that for me, the Hecate energy I'm tapping into very much enjoys working with decks that have animal energy in it. Animal, plants, and yeah, very much so. So it would be the nameless one that also comes with an oracle deck. I keep oracle deck separated because this is my clarifier for the stack. That's how I keep them separate. And I may do an in-depth discussion about it. So that would be the first one that I would recommend. If you have it, great. Keep in mind, by the way, obviously, it goes without saying, I think, this is very obvious, that all of the decks I share with you here today, you don't need them. You can use right away Smith deck, really. I just know that a lot of you have a collection of decks. Sometimes it's interesting when you seeing somebody talk about a goddess that maybe you're drawn to, or maybe you already work in this Hekate, and maybe I'll show a deck that you're like, oh, I have it, I never thought about working, or something similar. And sometimes it sparks your imagination to use your decks in a different way, but you obviously don't need this decks, right, to work with Hekate. I think it goes without saying. So you don't need to buy the tools. This one I just got recently too. Hashter. I was talking to Jess briefly on Instagram about Hekate, and I was saying how Hashter is totally another Hekate deck, and Jess was like, oh, I never thought about that. And I realized I never thought about that either. Why is it such a Hekate deck apart from having animals in it? And I realized, by the way, this is also the second deck I read with reversal. The Hashter is a Hekate deck because it has so much to do with life, rebirth, especially decomposition, especially the decomposition of the flora and fauna and human bodies. And to me, that is embodiment of who Hekate is. She is all of those things. And when you're at the crossroads, this deck especially embodies for me crossroads, the challenges you have to confront that are so difficult for you, and things about you that have to decompose, that you have to bury, that you have to leave behind, things that are going to be reborn. Some things about your decomposition are going to be morphed and shifted into something else. So this is another one, Hashter. Some people call this Fae deck. To me, it doesn't look like Fae deck. When I look at the people in here, I don't see Fae energy. I'm sorry. I'd be so curious to know if anybody else who heard that people call it Fae deck, do you also not see Fae energy? Because I don't. This deck, maybe a deck that's not familiar to everybody. It is out of it. The shapes that I have it in is out of print, but the creator has it in print, just in different, without any borders. So you can easily get this deck. This deck is also a recent addition of mine. It is a photography deck, as far as I know, and the creator knows. It is the first ever photography deck. It's B. Nettles' deck called Mountain Dream Tarot. And the interesting story about this deck is I became aware of this deck 10 or 12 years ago. I had a client who found out I was into tarot, and she said, oh, I have tarot deck too. And I said, really, what kind of tarot deck do you have? And she said, I have B. Nettles' photography deck. And I was like, I don't know what it is. And I looked it up, and I didn't really get it back then. Now it came around to me just recently, and I looked at the photographs. And by the way, these are all, and you guys, you have got to, if you're interested, you got to look up, and I'll link some information below. You got to look at B. Nettles on YouTube. I'll try to link it below, talking about this deck and creation of this deck and how everything in the card was photographed. There was no Photoshop back then. There was no way to stage things. If you see something on fire, it was on fire, she says. So she really had to stage in order to make the swords work. She had to bend the swords. Oh, look at this moon. I love this moon. The majors in this deck are fucking spectacular, in my opinion. Just spectacular. And this is B, even in the photograph, she said that everybody she photographs for people who were nearby where she lived. When I saw this deck, sorry, I just heard, I have the ice in my fridge drop so loud. Sometimes it freaks me out. I always tell my husband that if I ever did magic and like something materialized, I would totally shit my pants because I'm scared of the noise the ice machine makes. And sometimes I walk in and my husband will like walk in front of me, and I wasn't expecting him, and I freaked out, and he's like, what? Didn't expect I live here. So let me get back to this deck. When I saw, and I'm going to find the cards to show you. When I saw this deck, again, this time I saw somebody do like a walkthrough on it, because there's not many at all. I think there's only one or two. When I saw somebody do a walkthrough and I looked at the cards intensively, I had chills running down my back. I immediately felt that this deck is so paranormal, I want to say. I felt that it was so magical. And those of you who know me know how much I absolutely hate Rider-Waite-Smith renditions. This is the Rider-Waite-Smith rendition to a T, and I did not care about that, because this was like, I could just feel ghosts in it. I can't explain it. It just felt surreal to me. So I ordered the deck, and I got the copy. I got the copy on eBay because I wanted to have the borders, because I think it looks better that way for me. So I ordered the deck. It comes in, and I start looking into B. Nettles, and there's a story where she talks about this deck, and she said when she was making it, weird things just kind of happening. And for example, she said for the death card, which is my favorite after Aleister Crow's card. Look at this with those giant cedars. She said for the death card, she was looking for a guy who lives in her neighborhood, she was looking for somebody with the sulking cheeks, having that like look appearance. And she found this guy, and she asked him, and he was like very hesitant to do it. And then he finally did it. And it turned out that he was actually sick with, I think he was terminally ill with cancer, I believe she said. And that's why it was so challenging for him to be photographed, to model for this card, because it was so hitting too close to what he was going through. Another card, she said she was, finished making 10 of Swords, and she was in her studio printing or exposing. Oh my God, photography is obviously not my strong suit. Working in darkroom, let me just stop at that. And suddenly somebody rang the bell, and they said, have you heard what happened? She said, no, what happened? And apparently down the street, just when she was making this photo, somebody has been either stabbed or shot, I believe shot to death. So when she told that story, I had chills going down my spine, because it kind of affirmed for me what I already had been picking up about this deck, that like, this is something. So this is very, very Hecate for me too, because it's so clear and so concise. And because it has real people who may no longer even be here with us, it makes it such a treasure. I approach this with such a tremendous amount of respect, because I feel like these people in these photographs are, and B. Nettles is in here too, and she's still doing really well, and she's alive. And I'm sure a lot of other people, her sons are in here. She photographed her sons. But perhaps a person who was on a death card, well, he's not here with us living, he's definitely in here with us also living in a different form. And for that reason, I approach it with such respect to this literally living and also non-living spirits. Yeah, so this is a very special deck, and I've been really enjoying it. The final deck that I think is great if you want to work with Hecate instead of the Crone, I just realized, and I'm really sorry for being an asshole, I just remembered this deck somebody pointed out to me is out of print. I think it's out of print, and I think it's going for crazy prices. And so I don't mean to, if anybody really interested in it and really want it, I don't mean to make you salivate over it. I bet, the creator, Ellen Lorenzi Prince, is such a nice person. I bet if a lot of you wanted this deck, and I bet if people email her, maybe they'll be back in print or something will come out. I mean, her decks, the Dark Goddess Tarot, has been picked up by Schiffer, I believe. So why can't this one be picked up by Schiffer? I'm sure a lot of people would love to have it. But this is also a very Hecate deck because it is Very, very occulty deck. Very witchy deck. If you're looking for a deck for witchcraft, it is very, very mystical deck. And it's a deck full of symbols. It is a deck that symbolizes to the unconscious. Look at this. This is the very potent symbolism. So this would be the magic of the Ten of the Crown. So these are my tarots that I would recommend working this Hekate. Let me give you now my oracles that I would suggest. Oracles that I would recommend are oracles that would serve really, really good clarifiers. Let's start with clarifiers first. I love clarifiers because I read too much into stuff and like, oh my God, my head now has exponentially made something into something that it's not. So let me clarify. Okay, so first clarifier, Obsidian Oracle of Etsy. I saw this one on, I think it's Bees Bonds, the Witch of Beans and Bonds. I think her channel called, her name is Victoria. I just recently found her channel. I really, really enjoy her content. She's like this amazing, grounded, no nonsense crone energy, which I just love that so much. So she talks about this deck really, really highly. I had this deck actually many years ago. Probably the only card I don't like in this deck. Many years ago and got rid of it. And now I got back and it has been amazing, amazing, amazing clarifier. This is also very, for me, Hecate energy. And again, not because Victoria speaks about this deck as a shadow work deck, but for me, this is a really, really good clarifier. And there's something about the animals and plants that I think, and crystals too, that I think just really, look at this. This one is for intuition. I drew this card on a full moon with the full moon card. When I actually did go to the crossroads for the first time in my life to do a Hecate somewhat ritual for the first time, I found crossroads where it was on a corner next to a house that had dogs howling like insane. So sometimes, you know, magic is around us mundane if we just listen. So that's a really great clarifier, Obsidian Oracle, and very Hecate energy for me. The other one, which is a great clarifier, and I don't know if this is Hecate energy for me because it has a key in the back. Of course, Hecate is known for keys, opening the doorways. I love keys. But this is truly, to me, is very Hecate energy. And this one has been a great, great clarifier as well. This is the Magic of You Oracle by Fiona. Is it Fiona? Fiona somebody, right? I'm sorry, Fiona. I don't remember your last name. This is also a great clarifier. And a final one that also an amazing clarifier. No, there's two more. Sorry, this one and one more oracle. There's great clarifier. Is the Magical Botanical Oracle. I read this one with reversal. This is very, very Hecate energy. It's very confrontational. It's very honest. It's very upfront. It will make you to look at the clarifying aspects of being at the crossroads where you're at, whether you want or not. It's really, really good. Really good. And last one. This is so Hecate energy. Let me know if you agree. Brian Fratt's Fiery Oracle, very, 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 very Hecate energy. The reason why this is a Hecate, and I also read this with reversal, as you can see, because this is a truth-bearing deck. It's just like her. It will tell you how it is. It is very honest. It is very, very down to earth. Oh, we have lots of reverses going there for a minute. So this would be Brian Fratt Fiery. There's two more decks that are not tarot decks. There's their own systems that I think if you are, let me rephrase it. For me, working with Hecate, they have been really instrumental to clearly see and understand things I don't understand, and to be cautious. One of these decks in particular has taught me to tread water cautiously and not to to be ignorant, to be mindful, to be patient, to listen. It has given me warning signs when warning signs were needed. The first one is, and they're both by Josephine McCarthy, amazing magician. The first one is Queer Magician Stack. This is the first one, which the art in this is spectacular. It's absolutely gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. Let me show you some of my favorite. I mean, the detail in the stack is just ridiculous. So this has been. I'm not going to say anything about that, but look at the detail. How amazing is that? So this one is a great deck to help you understand where you are on your magical path, to give you clarity. And for me, who's so amateur working with energies such as Hecate's strong energy, this has been really good guide. And another one by Josephine McCarthy is her recent Mystagoga stack that has been, this one has especially been incredibly instrumental in helping me understand when to pull back, when to sit, when not to rush, when to be respectful, when like, oh, you're stepping on something you shouldn't be stepping, pull back, girl. Has been very, very good. Also beautiful art, different artworks and Queeria. I have a video talking in detail, in depth about the stack. If you haven't seen and interested in the stack, that's a really good video discussing it. So these two decks, if you have them, I think that would be a really great addition. If you don't, like I said, you don't need any of the tools. But this would be my recommendations. I'd love to hear which decks you associate with her, what's your primary way of mentalizing her, what are your favorite books? Are you going to take the Jack Grail class with me? If you are, fucking fantastic. Let's connect on Instagram. If you're not, totally legit. I know it's not for everybody, and it's also a luxury to take a class at that cost as well. So comment below, let me know, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.